Hello out there. My name is Abby Gardner. I own Abby Cooks Wild, a full-service meal prep and delivery company here in Golden, Colorado. And I am at my house today doing some prep for a client, and I wanted to come and share with you what we are going to be making for her today. So I'm actually starting out with a pork tenderloin recipe. This is so easy to put together at the last minute if you have what you need on hand, and even if you don't. I've made this with pork tenderloin, I've made this with chicken. If I don't have pork tenderloin, you can use chicken breast, you can use pork chops, you can use any white meat. What I have done is just coated this with about a tablespoon of Dijon mustard, and I've sprinkled it with salt and pepper. Behind me, I have a skillet that's heating about 2 tablespoons of avocado oil. And the reason I'm choosing to use avocado oil is because it has a very high smoke point, which means it's not going to oxidize when I'm heating it up as quickly as something like olive oil, which we all hear all the time, the health benefits of olive oil. But with olive oil, it doesn't have a high smoke point. So if you use olive oil over to cook with, that's great. Just use it over a lower heat setting, because if you put it up too high, it will oxidize and completely undo all of the health benefits that we keep hearing about. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this beautiful pork tenderloin into this pan, and it kind of sizzled. It didn't sizzle much because I turned the heat down. I have kind of started searing this pork tenderloin. I'm getting ready to turn it because I want it to be kind of equally cooked and equally seared and browned on all sides. So I'm letting it, you can kind of see it's kind of brown, but not really. Just want to get those outside edges to be not pink before I put it in the oven to finish. The original recipe that I'm using for this calls for me to put the skillet into the oven, but I am not going to do that because I don't trust that my cookware will not melt in the oven. So once it's done searing and browning on all sides, I'm going to transfer it back to this pan and put it in the oven for about 10 minutes. Okay, so this is about done searing. It's starting to get nice and brown on all sides. So I am actually going to turn the heat off. And it's still kind of crackling from the oil, but I am going to move this. You can kind of see how beautiful and brown and caramelized this is. I'm going to set it right here on the sheet pan and pop this bad boy into the oven, and it's going to bake for about 10 to 12 minutes or so. So that's just going to go right in here. I'm just setting it on the center rack, and I'm in a 425 oven. And I actually have the convection setting on. So if you don't have that setting, that's okay. Still go with 425. While that is baking, I'm going to get to work on the sauce. So to the pan that I just had this in, I'm going to add some apple cider vinegar. And I'm just going to kind of take a wooden spoon and scrape up all of the browned bits. Because that's where all the flavor is anyway, in the brown bits. In this measuring cup, I have 3 tablespoons of Dijon mustard and 3 tablespoons of maple syrup. So I'm going to add that in with the apple cider vinegar. And this is basically the sauce that we're making to drizzle over the top of the tenderloin. And I'm just going to stir that up and let it get all bubbly and combined. And it smells so good. I am going to add in a little salt and pepper. And I tend to use a really light hand with salt when I'm cooking, because my thought process is you can always add more, but once it's in there, you can't take it back out. So I'd rather add more either at the table or right before I serve it than add a bunch in there and then try to figure out how to offset or back out of it. I usually always cook with kosher salt as well. I rarely use like regular table salt. And you can kind of see that this is starting to thicken and get bubbly, and that's what I'm going for. I'm just going to mix this up, and then I'll be turning the heat off here in just a couple seconds to let it come back down to warm temperatures. Okay. I have some chopped up sage, fresh sage, and I'm going to add that to the sauce. And if you don't have fresh sage, you can use dried sage. But it's really pretty if you can use the fresh stuff, and it's super flavorful. All right, I'm turning this heat down. And I'm just going to move that over there until that pork's ready. So I've just pulled the pork tenderloin out of the oven, and I'm just letting it rest here so the juices can settle. Sometimes if you don't let your meat rest for a few minutes, you try to cut into it too soon if you're too hungry, and the juices go everywhere, and then it's kind of dried out and it doesn't really have any flavor. So it's really important to let it sit, let it rest. I will admit that I am not good at checking temperatures of meats, but I know some of you want to know that information. So I do have a meat thermometer. I don't use it often, but for this I'm going to use it, and I'm just going to put it right into the center and let it work its magic. I think pork needs to be at about 165 to 170, I think, off the top of my head. So I'm gonna let it try to do its thing here. I may need to pop this back in the oven for a little longer. It doesn't look like, just from even me making that poke, I can already tell it's not done on the inside. So I'm just gonna throw this back in the oven for a few minutes. Pork tenderloin 2.0. It wasn't quite ready when I did this before, so we're going to try it again. It did just come out of the oven. It is sizzling hot, but the juices are definitely running clear, which is what we want. I am going to go ahead and try to get the thermometer into the center to measure the temperature, and it should be between 165 and 170. So temperature's climbing. It's going to take a minute. This is also one of the reasons we let it rest. Yep, and we're right where it needs to be. It's right at 165. Yay! So I'm going to take this out. If I was serving this right away, don't forget we have our sauce here. And I'm going to drizzle this with the sauce before I slice into it to enjoy. You can always make extra sauce. If you're a sauce person, you like a lot, you can always double the sauce so that you have extra to drizzle on the table after it's been sliced. But for all intents and purposes, this is ready. The only thing that I haven't done that I would probably do if I had company coming would be to slice up a few more sage leaves and sprinkle it on there for a little pop of color. But for all intents and purposes, this is done, and it smells amazing, and I'm sure it is going to be absolutely delicious.